Oh my God, I'm back. Welcome. My name is Tyrone Powell. This is the OK Man podcast. Welcome to season 2, year 2. I took a bit of a break, and it's taken me a lot of effort to get back on the horse here. And I mean, I'm not shaving this. I guess part's only for YouTube, but it's been a weekend, and I'm not cleaned up. I didn't even put myself together to record this. I'm just getting it done because that's what you got to do sometimes. You just got to start, you know? You just got to get it done. Anyways, yeah, so today's guest is Dustin. And Dustin and I went to school together, Yorkville University, finished our masters. I think at the time we recorded this in November of last year. He wasn't quite done his hours. I was just getting into my practice. But we had a really, really good conversation. And we, over the 2.5 years that we were in school together, we interacted quite a few times. There weren't many men in the program in comparison relatively to how many women there were. So we obviously kind of connected and communicated quite a few times and found, I guess, kindred spirits as both men in the mental health space. But this conversation is really good. We talk about some darker topics, some violence, some abuse, some porn, some parenting, some treatment approaches with men, and quite a few other things. Oh yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the 2026 season of It's Okay Man. We're going to have some fun this year, having some good conversations about important topics. I hope you'll stick around, and I hope you keep listening. So, as always, I mean, if you're listening, you probably know I am a therapist. I'm a counselor. You can find all of my stuff at hellotyrone.ca. Please check it out. Reach out if you're looking to chat, even if it's just to do some exploring about yourself or what you're interested in or what's going on with you, or maybe you want to scream into the void in front of somebody and get some validation, because that's kind of the vibe right now, it seems, unfortunately. Anyways, I'll leave you to it. Enjoy. Okay, hello, Dustin.
Hello, Tyrone.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Good.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Thank you for taking your time to share your thoughts on what we're going to talk about today. But yeah, we'll jump right into it right away. What is your definition of masculinity?
I have a few thoughts of that, but would you mind if I just start with a little bit of an acknowledgement?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
A little bit of a situation just for where I am right now.
Sure.
I come to you from a place that the Mi'kmaq call Bunamagwadi, and it's known by its colonialist name as Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, Canada, across the harbor from Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I've been here for about 30 years. Came here with my wife for her to start medical school, and we've had 3 kids here, almost all of whom have finished and left the nest. And then I just started counseling school a few years ago, and I'm just finishing up my practicum right now. When I answer the question, what is masculinity? For me, it's deeply entwined with parenting, because I have 2 sons. So I'm very mindful about trying to teach them what it means to be a healthy, good man. That's like a key part of it. And excuse me, all of that is informed by my background and who I was raised by, which is really relevant here. And it's something that I didn't actually acknowledge the importance of until I was in grad school in one of our courses. Do you happen to remember the Geneagram project from the couples and family therapy course?
Yeah, of course.
and you go and you sort of do like a 2-generation past dive into your family history, and you analyze the relationship dynamics and the trauma histories of all these different family members that have impacted and affected who you are today. And when I did that, I was giving some thought to my mother, and I didn't really think about her as having had such an influence on me as she had. But my mom is queer. She's a lesbian. Mm-hmm. She raised me as a single mom from a young age. And she was also instrumental in starting the women's and equal rights movement in Calgary when I was growing up in the 80s. So I was raised in this really interesting culture of queer social justice activists.
Yeah.
Marches were being organized, news interviews were being held, and it was all around a central idea of ending violence against women, which by its very definition meant addressing toxic masculinity and abuse.
Yeah.
So that's like the context. When you ask me, like, what is my definition of masculinity? I think of what a definition of healthy masculinity is.
Right.
Which at its very base, because of its extremely high prevalence in our culture, is not to have violence against women. And to broaden that towards queer folks and other, marginalized genders and other identities like that, it's to try to reverse the effects of the legacy burden of misogyny and violence against women. That's what it means to be a good man. What is that like for an answer? Is it too abstract? Is it too vague?
It might be the most abstract one we've gotten, but it's good. I like. It's along the lines of the responsibility that comes with being a man and having power today, right? Like, it's like we have the responsibility. We see the past, we see the harm, right? And you said like violence against women or marginalized groups. It's like, well, violence against men too, right? Like, it's just the toxic and harmful forms of that masculinity are so harmful to everybody. And it's
and many men who have been harmed, many men who have experienced trauma at the hands of other men. Yeah,
absolutely. Or because of, when you think about when you think about trauma, one of the first things that comes to mind is, for me at least, is like veterans, right? And it's like, well, these are top level elite men playing games with the emotional and mental states and physical states of so many other men for war and other things like that, right?
Yeah, my gosh.
Just got heavy. So the other portion you mentioned is, of course, parenthood and raising. You said you have 2 boys, sorry?
Yeah, so I have 2 boys. They're just about 18 and just about 19. One's in grade 12, one's in university. And, during COVID, they were in their early teens. And, during COVID, everybody dove into their phones so deeply. Mm-hmm. And I just can recall so many moments during their middle teen years where I'd just be worried about the stuff they were getting exposed to, because at that time, it didn't have that label, which we now call the Manosphere. Mm-hmm. But there's just this pocket, this bubble of pretty crappy misogynist claptrap being peddled by a bunch of different bros online. Mm-hmm. And as a dad of boys, I was always worried about that, always paranoid about it, always wanting to talk to the boys about it. I'm pretty sure they found it pretty cringe and annoying that I wanted to talk about topics like that with them so often.
Yeah.
As well as porn, right?
Mm-hmm. It's everywhere.
Both of those are thorny topics, but they are so critically important if you're trying to raise a sensitive, loving, non-harmful boy into the world,
Yeah. Well, and not even that, just like a not screwed up boy. Mm-hmm. And it's like,
like,
but I'm shooting for a high bar.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you think about just, I don't know, like the dopamine, how the porn messes with your dopamine system, right? And it's like even the transition of how accessible it is. Like, it's just everywhere. You pull up search on Instagram, and it's feeding. It wants you to click on it, and if you look too long at one, it just cascades it, right? And it's built to trap boys.
You're a parent, right?
Yeah, I got 2 kids. I got a 3-year-old girl, 3.5. They're almost 4 and almost 2.
Okay.
The younger one is a boy.
What would you like your boy to know about porn as he's growing up?
That it is a fake depiction, right? Like it's acting the same way any movie, the same way any movie.
Yeah, that it's not a realistic depiction of the sexual act.
No. Yeah, exactly. That that it is acting, and that it is. I'll teach him as much as I can the I guess biological and psychological effects of it, right? Like, it's like you as a human are naturally attracted to sex because of XYZ reproduction,
the urge to procreate. Yeah,
exactly.
The biological urge to procreate.
So faking that through a screen is messing you up. You know?
Yeah, I also liked when I was having these uncomfortable conversations with my sons, I would want to really emphasize the experience of the female actors in the films.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so rare that their pleasure is centered. But more than that, it's so common that they're actually being victimized or assaulted or brutalized in those videos. And there's like this extra dimension to porn that kids need to understand, is that you can look at what is now fairly garden variety free porn, and it's incredibly violent.
Yeah. And it's not even that. You're like, that's garden variety free. It's like anything is free. You can find anything.
I know. I just mean that, like, that kind of violent porn where women are subjugated to literal mistreatment, there's no firewalls behind that except a button that says, yes, I'm 18 or older, you know? So that, like, without trying to scare or fearmonger with the kids, I want them to know that, like, looking at that and participating in that kind of thing is propagating harm against women. The very industry is predicated upon it. And it has a tendency to dehumanize the way you feel about these actors if you look at them a lot on the screen.
Yeah.
And you would hate to have that kind of feeling transferred to your own approach to interpersonal relationships when you have your first girlfriends, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
It's such a harmful way to show connection and intimacy. Like, you could,
to constantly be desensitized, and then to bring that to the real world and have just no human connection in relationships and sex.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. Yeah. I have memories of in junior high, like in the locker room, you know, in gym class.
Sure.
I have memories of overhearing conversations with some of the jocks in the room. I was never one of them. I was always like the chubby kid who had no athletic talent at all. Tried to change in the bathroom stall so that nobody had to see me with my shirt off. And these guys would talk about their sexual conquests, you know, 14, 15, 16 years old. And glorifying the fact that they were taking advantage of these girls, you know, and getting what they wanted out of them. It's so hard to, like, be in the presence of that kind of thing and to do anything about it in the moment when you're in those peer pressure-y situations, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's even so for you, who kind of grew up like you said with your mom, and in that situation. Like you were one of the few kind of educated ones about it at a young age, I assume. So,
Sure.
But
I still couldn't speak up in those moments.
Well, exactly, right? Because you still have to fit in socially as a boy, right? Like if you speak up, you're getting your head in the toilet, like this loser doesn't want to jump on our abuse train.
Yeah. So that's a real cultural issue, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned the locker room. It's like I remember a guy in high school. I was actually pretty good friends with him. Didn't understand that at the time, but he had a goal of getting a body count, sleeping with 100 girls by the end of high school.
Oh my gosh!
He did it.
He did it. Good for him.
Allegedly.
Gosh.
And it's like, looking back at that now, it's just like, what the hell? Like that's crazy. To like, where does that come from? Where does that get established? Like that only gets passed to have that type of goal at such a young age means at some point some adult figure had an influence on him that said, whether it was in the media or in person, that said this is the goal, right? Like or a friend that said, hey, if the more women you sleep with, you are cooler, or it's braggable, or that should be what you're striving. That makes you a man in social situations.
Yeah, something about that is normalized in that milieu where they are.
Yeah.
So, gosh, dark topics. But part of talking about masculinity for me, especially with what I've seen as I've begun counseling practice, it just seems so intensely relevant because I'm either treating men who have been traumatized and are having issues with processing their own emotions and handling their anger and other problematic emotions, or I'm treating women and other folks who have been abused by men or other people like that. It's really like the Venn diagrams of those two things overlap so deeply. I just find myself thinking about all that all the time when I think about masculinity. I fear that sounds a little bit pathologizing, but it's kind of real,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just there, right? And we look at, like, if it's the men, it's not the men that are sick. The men are the symptom, right? Like, in my opinion, it's like the culture around it, the expectation, the media, the where we, what we glorify, the manosphere, how that's grown, like all of that leads to the symptoms that you see and you treat. So when we talk about, is it a pathology? It's like, well, sure, but I don't think it's necessarily the men that are the problem, which is, I mean,
that's a good way to put that.
Strong feminists have written great books about it. I mean, who? Mel Brooks?
Bell Hooks.
Mel Hooks, no, Mel Brooks.
Yeah, Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks, The Will to
I don't
Change.
think Mel Brooks has done any any good writing on that. Yeah, Bell Hooks. Yes, I agree. Yeah, they've done really good stuff on that.
Yeah, A Will to Change. It's all about that, right? It's like, well,
yeah, absolutely.
And it needs the pain to continue, right? Like, it needs the problem because those problems uphold the system that creates more problems.
It's true.
Cyclical, right? So what else is kind of something maybe a little bit lighter that you've been,
well, listen, I have to say, so I've had a couple of interesting experiences around my own masculinity this year. I've done a couple of things that is not something I would normally do. I joined a men's group, which meets every couple of weeks. And it's just a very general men's group of men to gather together to talk about their experiences of being men. And I also went on a men's retreat over this one weekend. with 16 other guys, and we did a series of yoga and other different sort of reflective practices and sharing and different stuff. It was like a fascinating sort of intensive workshop style weekend.
Sure.
And I've discovered that powerful, positive, therapeutically relevant things happen when men can gather in community and share with each other their struggles, their feelings, their emotions. It's not something that men usually do, but I've been very powerfully moved by what I've observed in these meetings with these other gentlemen who just gather together, share some of the struggles they're going through each week. I mean, it's really like, I'm talking generic stuff, but it's the experience of sharing their feelings with one another, seeing them be validated and understood by other guys in the room that have had something similar happen to them. There's some powerful stuff that happens when men gather like that. I kind of have seen that as a bright light for the future, you know, about how we can have a positive effect for men.
Yeah.
Gatherings like that, groups like that encourage that kind of interaction are very interesting, very powerful.
Yeah, and where do you think the power comes from? Like, why is it different than?
Well, you know what? There's a reading I have here from Bell Hooks that actually addresses this. Can I read it to you?
Yeah, please do.
Patriarchy rewards men for being out of touch with their feelings. Whether engaged in acts of violence against women and children or weaker men, or in the socially sanctioned violence of war, men are better able to fulfill the demands of patriarchy if they do not feel. Men of feeling often find themselves isolated from other men, and this fear of isolation often acts as the mechanism to prevent males from becoming more emotionally aware.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way it does it is by helping men get in touch with their feelings.
Yeah. In a safe place, right?
In a safe place. Yeah.
I think a big portion of it too is the intention, right? Like I've got a couple friends that will only get together with me if we are doing something, right? Let's get together and do this. Let's get together and do that. Let's play video games. Let's go for dinner. Let's go do this, right? Let's go. It's task oriented, right? As opposed to, I've got another couple friends who I arguably have stronger relationships with, and it's, hey, let's meet up, like come over and let's just talk about life, you know? And that, so when you're talking about like the intention of meeting up every couple of weeks and literally I'm just going to go talk about the things that have happened or something that's on my mind or a retreat that I'm going to emotionally connect and emotionally experience versus I'm going to go do some yoga and sit in a field and see what happens, you know, which might be how it is the first time for somebody. And then you've practiced it and you know that you can go and do it and you won't be labeled or othered or sent home with a swirling or something.
And you know, most of those guys I find have had pretty toxic masculine influences during their own upbringing, but all feel motivated to reverse that trend in their current day relationships with their kids and their wives and their families.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to be around that kind of energy, you know, men that are just trying to be better.
Yeah.
Even in light of having had bad experiences when they were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like I don't want to say a symptom, but it's a consequence of what's happening, right? Like everything we've seen the Manosphere, we see that toxicity, and you look at it and you're like, that doesn't seem right. And then you're like, okay, well, I kind of experienced something similar. Like maybe I should explore this, right? Like we've got more men talking about this side of things in a way. And it's just the introspection never really happens until it gets put in front of you and you're faced with a mirror and you're like, hey, ask yourself this question. And you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Our good friend and colleague Steph McDonald, whom you just had as a guest recently,
Name drop.
she asked you a question about why you're doing this podcast. And if I remember correctly, you said something about just wanting to contribute something to the media atmosphere that is positive about masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
Something to sort of shout into the wind against the manosphere. Is that an accurate summation?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's two portions of it. Like there's the one is I feel that it needs to be countered. I feel that there needs to be positive like certain voices around this topic with this perspective. And then also and to empower through that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you ask?
No, I was just kind of curious about what that experience has been like for you through the production of the podcast. Are you feeling kind of like a connection? Are you getting feedback from folks about how they're landing? Like, I'd like to hear more about what that experience has been like for you.
I think that there's more people listening quicker than I thought. Like I read some articles about like what kind of views or listens to expect downloads. And it was like, oh, I got 10 listens a month for years on my podcast. And like, I think I'm at about 100, 150 a month already, so I'm like blown away, way more than I thought. Yeah. I don't know that I've received that much feedback. You've sent me a message or two. A couple other people listen regularly that aren't like my mom or my sister. So I know that it's reaching some people. So I don't know. I'm honestly not tracking it that much. I'm literally just like, okay, well, I literally just want to put this stuff out there. So, and I feel that there's a gap in it. So I'm like, I think these are good conversations.
Yeah. I do too.
Maybe somebody will hear it that, even if it's one person, like then it's worth it, in my opinion. And I just really enjoy the conversations, to be honest. So it's partially just for me, but.
And how do you feel it'll tie into your counseling practice, if at all?
I've shared it with a couple of my clients and said like, hey, I do have this podcast on masculinity you might be interested in. I mean, if somebody hears it and says, oh, I would like to be a client of Tyrone's, like, yeah, sure. Great.
Right.
And it's kind of separate in my opinion. But I know that there's a little bit of crossover. But I try and, like I said, these are just conversations. But I know, I even know that a couple of counselor friends that we may or may not know mutually, they've suggested it to their clients too. So it's a breath of fresh air just to have a discussion about these topics that isn't infused with bro. That's fair. Do you see, so you said you speak to men. Is that kind of a lot of what you're countering when it comes to like messaging and that kind of thing when you are counseling men?
Did you say that I'm countering it?
Yeah, like the bro messaging and that kind of thing. Do you find yourself against that?
I don't think that my approach involves countering at all, actually. That's a super interesting question because that is something that we learned about in school, right? Like how to create reframes and countering messages to sort of like adjust thought constructions that are causing problems for people.
Sure.
I mostly use an IFS approach and parts work to look at these things. So I probably would be like, if I'm noticing a client who is expressing views that seem to be congruent with that stuff, like misogynistic bro world views, I would probably want to investigate like what part of him feels so connected to that and what's going on for that part and what is it getting from being, exposing itself to that stuff? What sort of deeper urge is it fulfilling or what sort of deeper fear is it helping it to avoid, And use that as a way into a deeper conversation about their actual experience of being in that world and understanding the relationship they have between the viewpoints that are expressed in those kind of things and how it applies to their relationships with the other people in their life. I think I would make it very, very individual and personal.
No. Interesting.
Yeah. Because there is a part to this that I find interesting, actually. You're reminding me that I wanted to find a way to try to talk about this, but I think it's difficult to sort of, well, it's not that difficult to talk about, but it's just the counter-transference that comes up as a counselor when you're talking to somebody who may have revealed to you that they have mistreated somebody. Like the personal reaction that can arise in you when you realize that you're sitting with somebody who has really hurt someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's analogous to being a criminal defense attorney for somebody's internal negative part or something, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
there's something that caused that part to do that thing. And if they feel judgment or shame or anger from you towards it, they will shut down and you will not be able to make any progress.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember wanting to ask you what your experience is with this, because I have found it very interesting to observe and process my own countertransference in the moment in the room where I'm like, oh, I think this guy's actually been fairly abusive towards his partner.
Yeah.
How am I going to respond to him in this moment in a way that doesn't alienate him?
Yeah.
And that helps us to propel the therapy forward, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I can't say I've come across anything that's been like a partner abuse, like DV, or IPV, but like when it comes to racial issues, I had like broaching topics like that. And I had somebody who was using derogatory racial slurs.
Tell me, how did you deal with that?
I stopped them and I said, hey, look, like you can tell me this story and you can tell me how you acted, but like, we don't use that language here because it is harmful. Right. And it's like, and understanding and relaying like, hey, I want to respect your experience. I want to respect why you're using those terms, blah, 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 but we don't have to use them here. And that's just the lay of the land. Right. And it's like setting that up where it's like, okay, I'm not judging you for it, but I also have my own, I'm still a person. Right. And if you were to, it's this, yeah, it's setting it up in a respectful manner where we disagree.
Yeah.
And if our goal is to work together in therapy, then we need to disagree in a respectful manner, really, right?
Yeah.
In a non-judgmental manner. And I think that's kind of really what I push for in genuine therapy, is that we are two different people. We are going to disagree. I'm going to show up as me, as much as me as I see as appropriate. And this disagreement can be a model for what happens when you go out in the real world and you have a disagreement.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So when somebody starts calling you racial slurs or whatever, treating you poorly, you can say, hey, I disagreed with Tyrone in the therapy office and he treated me like a human being still. So maybe I should expect that and act that way out here as well. Right.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I find that parts language really helps in those kind of situations, you know, because I could imagine if somebody were using such a good example you gave, racist language in a session. I can think of myself saying something like, I got to tell you, like, there's a part of me that reacts really strongly to language like that, you know, finds it very offensive, very hurtful, even causes harm in some places. Like, do you think you could, like, you know, just that a little bit of distance from it is helpful to do that? I find that's useful. I'm trying to think of if that would, like, I haven't encountered that one.
Yeah, to me, it's a matter of like, I don't know. It's just this idea of like, can a client anybody, can they just come to therapy and have free reign to do whatever? Like you wouldn't let a therapist, like you wouldn't let, in my opinion, you wouldn't let a client come in and like abuse you emotionally.
Certainly
as a therapist, right? So like,
yeah.
So I'm allowed to draw a line there.
For sure.
So in the spirit of, hey, you treat me like a human being and we come together in a respectful manner and we work together on personal growth for the client.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is who I am as a therapist, then I think that abusive language like that or whatever is okay to have a line drawn, you know?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I am reminded I'm just reminded of I often find myself feeling like in certain situations there's an empathy gap between the people that you're talking to, you know, especially in couple stuff, you know, like having trouble understanding the other person and what's going on for them. And they're very focused on what's going on for themselves. So gosh, I'm sorry. I just lost that little tendril of a train.
Empathy gap.
Well, it was trying to encourage. I know what it was. I've had this experience where somebody's telling me their experience of being frustrated with their wife in these cases. And I ask them what they think their wife's experience of them was in that same moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been pleasantly surprised by the reaction that most of them do have accurate insight into it. They often will sort of chuckle and say, she for sure thought I was being an absolute jerk. Mm-hmm. And there's something about that little realization that I found can jog some nice conversations. There's some deeper discussion about that. You're like, oh, so what did you think that was like for her? Like, does that explain anything to you more about how she responded to you next? And then he's like automatically in a reflective process where he's like, yeah, actually, like maybe if I hadn't done that, this wouldn't have happened, or that kind of thing, you know, like,
yeah.
But it is nice to just ask them, what do you think they would say if they were in the room right now and they were telling their version of the same story you've just told me?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the key is to, and if you relate that to just like men in general, it's like we're taught to shut off that empathy. We're taught to be, we're taught to put on this cap where we have to lead and we have to have responsibility and we have to do all these things. And we're trailblazing and making our own path and blah, blah, blah. And then when we don't really consider what's happening around us. And then as soon as you ask and say like, whoa, let's slow down. Like, what do you think happened there for the other people? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess my actions did do something. Right.
Yeah. It's probably hard for a lot of folks to do that outside of a therapy room, especially if they're activated in the moment. So it is nice in a session with somebody to be able to slow that down, just slow time down and just sort of unpack their experiences of those moments just to get them to get a little distance from it and to remember what it felt like.
So is that's the answer to world peace, getting people to slow down outside of the therapy office, or what? Getting men to slow down outside the therapy office?
There's something you were saying there. It's kind of like societal and cultural expectations of men about us being there to produce and to make things. And there is a thing, one of your guests whose name I've forgotten, that I think the title was about the yin and yang of masculinity.
Yeah, Dr. Broadhurst.
Okay. And I loved the exploration of what are traditionally masculine qualities and feminine qualities and how, like, embodying healthy masculinity involves holding a healthy balance of both forces. We think of masculine energy and masculine forces as being firm, solid, outwardly directed, logical, constructing, producing, that sort of stuff, and feminine energies as being sort of softer, more inward looking, more introspective, more in touch with feelings and emotions and the experiences of each other's connections with each other and that sort of thing. So it's often helpful to recognize that we're culturally overemphasizing for men the importance of those first qualities, and also actively discouraging them from cultivating those second qualities.
I think that's the big portion, right? Is the discouragement and the vilifying and that's not a real man and it's weak and and then it just creates this aversion to it where you have to shut it off and you can't feel, right? Like that's I was speaking to somebody recently. It's like that's not me. I don't cry. I'm not emotional. I can't do that. I gotta work. I gotta do these things. And what I ended up telling them was that it's funny. I've got a video recorded. I'm going to post it soon. But I'm like, life is so hard. Life can be so hard, and our expectations and societal pressure and everything can be so hard that people end their own lives. And you think that you aren't allowed to experience a little bit of emotion for probably a brief period of time. And you would rather take it to the grave than, because that's what'll happen eventually, right? Is we know, or you'll be so miserable that you'll project it outwards and hurt other people. Somebody gets hurt if this emotion doesn't come out in a healthy way. And not only that, like putting that into perspective of like, hey, it's okay to feel emotional about what's going on because of the extent of what these same pressures can do to other people. But also, when you're emotional, it's not about letting that emotion ruin you and carrying it for years and years and years and becoming a constant complainer or anything like that. It's about experiencing the emotion, letting it go, and making a plan and moving forward to right the wrong or change the situation, or if any of that's possible, of course. But it's brief and it's momentary and it's special and it's human. And then getting back into that man mode, and pushing forward and fixing and writing what needs to be righted. And I think that distinction of what the capacity to carry emotion can potentially be very powerful for some who have the wrong view of what it is to hold space for those feminine energies.
Can I share something with you that I recently heard from a really powerful interview with a great couples and family therapist named Terry Real? Have you ever heard that name?
I have, yeah. Yeah.
So he was telling a story in an interview with the New York Times, and it was about fathering and fathers and sons. It was really about like what we're talking about, kind of, and what we've talked about today. He was telling a story about a family therapy session he had with his own parents. His father was a violent and kind of abusive man, just hit him a lot whenever he was unhappy with him. In retrospect, realized that it was because whenever he showed vulnerability as a child, his father felt very threatened by that and would beat him for it physically. His father's father was so depressed that he actually tried to kill his own kids.
Wow.
And Terry's father hadn't processed any of that. And in this therapy session one day, it kind of broke through and the emotions started to flow. And Terry's dad just wept and wept and wept. He said, I've never looked at any of this before. When I left my house and left my father behind me, I just pretended none of it had ever happened. And he'd spent his whole rest of his adult life for the next 60 years just pretending it had never happened. and his father's weeping in this session, and Terry went to him and put his hand on his dad's shoulders, and he said, "You cry, old man, because every one of these tears that you're crying is one that I don't have to." It's a great metaphor for what you were just talking about the importance of feeling and processing our emotions, the value of that. Because if we don't, we turn them inward in some destructive way. We suppress them or repress them in some destructive way, and it comes out in hurting the others,
Yeah.
So I was really struck by that little excerpt from that interview, because I thought, geez, that's such a nice message to share with men in our counseling sessions or in our friendships. Any tear you shed with me now is one that your wife doesn't have to shed, or your partner, or your kids, because you can feel what's happening for you right now and not pass any of that negativity onto your family.
Yeah.
Moving stuff.
And so it's so interesting because we obviously were in it. And we see these experiences and we read about them and we seek them out because they're powerful and they're moving but like how the people. I'm reading a book right now. It's called My Wife Told Me to Go to Therapy. Somebody sent it to me.
Looks like a great.
Somebody sent it to me. They asked me to do a book review. So, and I'm reading it and I'm like, it's so good, but the people who need it aren't seeking it.
Oh yeah. So true. And there's nothing we can do about that, because you have to be willing to engage in treatment. You have to want it and recognize that there's something for you to work on. And lots of folks just don't.
And that's like, reading this book, I'm like, it's good. It's great. And it would be so powerful for so many people, but the people who need it aren't even going to pick it up.
It's possible. But hopefully a lot of people who do need it will.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. I have no doubt it'll help a lot of people, but it'll bring it back to like our emotional conversation. It's like that emotional expression, that emotional, like those journeys, personal internal journeys, need to be taken by so many that are effectively unwilling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how do you think we change that?
Well, COVID taught me to stop trying to change anybody's mind. So I don't anymore seek out opportunities to try to convince anybody of almost anything. But for anybody who's willing to come into my counseling room, I will be so incredibly warm and open to everything they're sharing that I hope that will promote the process with them.
Mm-hmm.
Just that emotional processing process of noticing, experiencing, and processing your own emotions, and feeling the peace of mind that comes after that is done. Feeling the peace of mind that comes from knowing that if you start crying, you're going to be able to stop crying. You're not going to just cry for 10 hours and lose the rest of your life here. Yeah. But you may have some really painful things that deserve your tears.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Normalize that, Just normalize tears.
Yeah, I talk about, like, one of the things I bring up a lot with men and just everybody is like the cycle of experience, right? And the Gestalt version is quite more in depth and so I simplify it with a lot of my clients and talking about like how like we perceive and then we process and then we emotional response and then we physiologically respond and then we're supposed to behaviorally respond, right? And some of the emotions we let go when we try, like happiness, we smile, funny, we laugh, whatever, loving, we hug, we kiss, whatever. But anger and sadness, so many times those are just, as soon as they hit the behavioral one, they get blocked. And we just stop it. And we're like, this can't come out. And I'm like, and I asked them, I'm like, where do you think that energy goes? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
it goes inside. It's like a toxin.
I'm like, you got to do something with it. And I'm like, listen to some angry music. Go scream into a pillow. Go cry. And just let it flow. And because that is your process. You are messing with your process when you don't.
Yes. My very gifted supervisor, whom I'm so grateful to be connected to for my training and practicum, her name is Dr. Ange Cooper. She practices IFS, but also does something that is a little more esoteric called intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. Right. But a key part of that, it's shortened to ISTDP, there's a key part of the process which often occurs, especially in folks who have been abused. It's what's called a rage enactment. And in the safety of the therapeutic space, we encourage the patient to cathartically experience their rage, their righteous rage that they deserve to have felt and experienced at some point in their life, but that they didn't. Can be a very powerful process.
Yeah, letting that out, finally, right? Getting angry, because we vilify anger, don't be able, and men are allowed to be angry, but also not allowed to be angry. It's like,
and women's anger is not welcome in society.
No, women's anger is also.
So it's nice in the room with those folks to encourage them to release that anger and to express it, because I've never yet met somebody whose anger wasn't justified.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? It's like anger is a natural response. And it usually comes from unfairness or unjustness or some sort of wrong being done. What we do with that anger, different story, but in a healthy manner, like, you got to let it out.
Yeah. There's another part of that process that happens too, which I think is really important, which is that if you allow somebody to really enact their rage, they might do something as drastic as, say, imagine putting their hands around the throat of their abuser and throttling them or choking them to death or something crazy like that. It's safe to do that in your imagination, because it's just your imagination and you're not actually going to follow through and do any of those things in real life.
Right.
The powerful thing happens emotionally when you imagine doing something like that. If you do it authentically, you will feel guilt. And guilt is an appropriate emotion to feel if you've caused such harm to somebody. And something that happens with guilt, which isn't allowed to be experienced, is that it so often turns into shame.
Yeah.
Which causes so many other problems. So the rage enactment can be so powerful because it helps you experience what it would feel like to right the wrong, so to speak, but then you feel a certain amount of guilt for having imagined something so terrible, and that leads you to a place of forgiveness towards yourself and maybe even them, and a sense of peace afterwards, so you don't have to carry that rage around anymore. It can be a very nice process. Wow. Even if sometimes it puts the pillows in your therapy room in danger.
You got to build in one of those rec rooms.
Yeah, those rage rooms, I think, yeah.
Into your back office. Fair enough. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. It's been about close to an hour. Can you... we always end with the same thing. What's a message, I guess, you have? Maybe it's to your boys, if they ever listen to this, or to society, to the men, to your clients, to people.
My biggest message, I think, for men is please to reach out to your fellow men. Find your male friends, connect to them authentically, share something personal and vulnerable with them. See what happens when you break those little boundaries of societal propriety that you've been constrained by for so long, and discover the beauty of what happens in relationships with other men. Be surprised at how rewarding and fulfilling it can be to connect authentically and emotionally with a man. Yeah, I'd like to normalize that, and normalize the feeling of like sharing your feelings with another guy and seeing what it feels like to relate to them on that level. And don't be afraid to let those tears drop. Those tears tell an important story, and they're cleansing and they're healing for us. We don't have to be scared of them.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Dustin.
Thank you, Tyrone. What a fun conversation. Thanks for having me.